in my experience, an open ongoing file is maintained on a crime that has not been successfully concluded by arrest and prosecution. Well, if it's a suicide, who are you going to arrest and who are you going to prosecute? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yahner's parents hope that someone will be arrested and someone will be prosecuted because they say the forensic facts tip the evidence scale. But letting the world know that Kalvin's death certificate will forever say homicide may be all they ever get.
You would never give up on your children while they're living. I'm not going to give up on just because he's dead. You help your kids. Once you have kids, you help them. They're always your kids.
The Yahners say they are not sure what other avenues are available for them, but they say they will continue to look.
When a local family couldn't find concrete answers about the 2003 shooting death of their son, they turned to a renowned psychic who voluntarily came to the scene to work on the case.
Noreen Rainier is featured on Court TV's Psychic Detectives, and we told you about her visit back in 2005. But until now, what she revealed was never made public.
But first, a warning. One of the pictures in the story is graphic. Angie Botoff reports.
But this was the only case in her career that she did not work with the police. She was working against them, so to speak.
Nationally known psychic Noreen Rainier was working against police because they believe Kalvin Yahner shot himself, a theory that his family refuses to believe, saying it is forensically impossible. It appears this is how the 17-year-old would have had to hold the gun to get the trajectory. We also were unable to find a position to make the reach to the trigger possible. This is home video of when Rainier was at the Loretto farmhouse where it happened. Rainier says the position was more like this, which likely means someone else was holding the gun according to her reading. Listen carefully as she explains how the shooter is experimental, wondering what it will be like to kill somebody.
Sometimes I wonder how it would feel to do this, or how it would feel to take this. So I do feel an experimental in drugs, but also what would it be like to kill somebody?
She says she felt Kalvin push the gun away, a theory that came up earlier when this picture was looked at. According to a blood spatter expert, the pattern of blood suggests Kalvin may have been in a defense position when he was shot.
She provided us with information and where evidence could be found. She provided us with an abundance of information that could have and should have been utilized that never was. That would have, we feel pretty certain, would have solved the case. If not,
it could have helped.
She also described who she believed the shooter was, saying he had some blonde in his hair, squareness in his chin, and almond-shaped eyes. She also pointed out a picture of who she thought the shooter was. She picked one boy out of 4 pages of different people. He was one of the boys that was at the scene that day, and Kalvin's family was not surprised by the person Rainier picked. And with all due respect, have you ever been just blatantly wrong about any of the cases that you've been involved with?
I've never had the police come to me and say we made an arrest and it was totally opposite of anything you said. I've never had anyone tell me it was 100. And then lots of times on missing persons, they can't find them at the time that we work, and then 6 or 7 months later, somebody in the woods would find the body, and they would say, yeah, everything you said was right. And in fact, I had a policeman call the other day. It was a woman, and she said, Hunter, somebody found the body we're looking for. But when she calculated, everything was there. So I've never had anybody say, you were 100% totally wrong. Never.
State police say the case is still open. It remains listed as homicide on Kalvin's death certificate.
Rainier says she would be willing to come back, but only if police are willing to work with her.
Monday. So before we say goodbye, we wanted to revisit a very important story, a piece that we spent a lot of time on, and that is the death of Kalvin Yahner. In this final installment, a local professor takes a look at the case. A contaminated crime scene, inconclusive polygraph, misquotes in reports, the lack of collected evidence, not to mention a physical impossibility make it irresponsible to discount foul play in Kalvin Yahner's death, if you ask Mount Aloysius criminology professor Joseph Boback.
Again, I'd seen the story when you started doing your little series on it, and it piqued my interest there because, I mean, it just seemed that something was so wrong, you know, from what I had seen, and I hadn't been a part of it at all. And
So we gave him the evidence, the witness statements and reports, the 911 tape. Blair County Coroner Patty Ross and the Yahner family agreed to let Boback view the pictures from the autopsy and the crime scene. He says glaring police errors are where it starts.
the scene was not taken care of as it should have been. People weren't interviewed as they should have been. The scene wasn't protected as it should have been. There were just so many things that went wrong with it. There was very little collected. There were some things that they had done to the rifle, but at the same time, there was things that they should have done that were left out. And they were very vital things. I mean, for one, you could have at least taken some fingerprints off of that rifle to see who was handling that gun. That was never done. They did do a...
In the first picture you see here, the butt of the gun is on the ground. The barrel is pointed at his forehead. This is what the investigating trooper says Kalvin did to shoot himself. But the bullet would have went the wrong way, up. It actually went downwards in the teen's head. We're told Kalvin would have actually had to have held it like the second picture. According to the measurements of his arms and the gun, though, his fingers wouldn't reach the trigger this way. Boback says it was probably something like this, the gun in someone else's hands, which he says would explain the direction of the blood spatter on Kalvin's hand.
Like I'm used to doing this, I didn't like a gun in my hand. But, the first thing you think of is to get that gun away from someone's head. So, he may reach over with his right hand to do it, but the quickest reaction would be the hand nearest the gun, which makes sense. If he would have just reached up this way, his hand's in the proper position whenever the gun goes off. Now we have the blood spatter going in the right direction. If you were taller, it would match up as far as that person holding the gun, and I was lower. The angle would have been right to get the right trajectory from the bullets.
Since we aired our series on this case, nothing has really officially changed. It's still listed as a suicide in Cambria County and a homicide on the death certificate in Blair County. But the Yahner family hasn't given up. In fact, they say if they can't have the case reinvestigated, why not have the investigators investigated? The FBI has a public corruption unit. The Yahners say that is their next stop.
We were told that the possible suspect had paid for the forensic report, that the possible suspect had failed a polygraph test, and that there basically would be no charges filed. And when we questioned that, we didn't receive any valid answer. We were just simply rushed from the office that the meeting had taken place in and said, basically, you don't want to be exposed to the press, you don't want to talk to the press.
A forensics report that disputes the homicide theory was used in Cambria County's investigation. It was provided by Dave Byer. That's the lawyer for Brian Donahue, another teen who was present when Yahner was shot.
At that time, Detective Miller said, you should be happy, we saved the taxpayers $1,200.
He said you should be happy?
We, I guess, as a group, we as a whole from Cambria County should be happy because they saved the taxpayers $1,200 by allowing the Donahue family to pay for the forensic report.
So the one provocative question that will remain is this. Why is nobody showing how it's likely suicide, but so many are demonstrating how it is likely homicide? Now the Yahners say they will never give up on their pursuit of the truth.